I think I'm saying that we struggle all our lives to answer it. That it's the struggle that is important. That's what helps us to define our place in the universe.
This is Beverly, Dr. Beverly, Dr. Beverly Crusher.
Look where we are. Here, all of us, in this moment. So let's do what we spent our entire lives learning to be great at.
And this is Crusher Convo.
I made it! An hour and a half later, but I made it. I am so sorry, guys. As everyone knows, I was in a car accident last week, and I decided I'm going to look at some cars, and somehow I bought one. And that's not an easy process. So thank you for being so patient. Thank you, Jay, for being so patient. And this is my special guest. This is Jay. He's back. Yay.
Hello.
But anyway, so yes, welcome to Crusher Convo, where we're crushing the conversation one episode at a time. And today I have faith in the heart as I am deep diving into my first Enterprise episode, as we discuss season 2, The Breach. And of course, like I said, with me is special guest and a very special friend, Jay. Thank you for coming back and revisiting this episode with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on your first Enterprise breakdown.
First Enterprise, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I spun the wheel. This was a special episode when I was watching Enterprise. And fun fact, I forgot to rewatch the episode because I've been busy with the whole insurance thing and the car and work. But I still got some pieces in my head because it was that impactful. But before we fully get started, I'm going to jump in and talk about my sponsor. So Cherry Tree. If you love computers, board computers at that, if you love Lower Decks little keyboard buttons and even a Klingon keyboard and mouse, go find Cherry Tree. You can find them on the socials at Cherry Tree Incorporated. And if you buy their stuff at mycherrytree.com, use my code CrusherConvo6 to get 6% off your order. Just want to throw that out there. So Jay, this is actually your first episode in season 3 of Crusher Convo, and I've changed up the questions. So tell the listeners, what is your trek and why?
What is my trek and why? Like series, right?
Oh yeah.
Deep Space Nine. And I think,
why is that?
I think because at the time when it came out, I was, preteen, early teens. And I feel of the kind of classic Trek, it was probably at the time the most adult. So it felt like watching my first, grown up show.
Right.
But I mean, just the writing is fantastic. I think, most Deep Space Nine fans, they know why. They know why Deep Space Nine, right? So, the first series to do a semi-serial story arc, which took them 5-6 seasons to get through, which was
right.
Fantastic. I think the slow burn into it, the build up for it, and then full scale war for I think it was the last 2.5 seasons that they were really in conflict with the Dominion, right? So yeah.
Actually, we have Joe from Captain's Quadrant in the chat saying, "Hey, friend," and he would agree. His trek is also Deep Space Nine, which he explained in my last episode when we were talking about Deep Space Nine's Take Me Out to the Holosuite. So the one thing that I loved about Deep Space Nine is how different it was from TNG, right? So TNG got me into Trek. I enjoyed it. Love Beverly Crusher, the whole shebang. But Deep Space Nine, like you said, was not really episodic. There was that continuity of a big storyline that lasted multiple seasons, which made it interesting. So I can agree.
I think to put it into kind of a modern perspective too, like if you look at the Star Wars series that are out right now, I feel like Deep Space Nine is like Andor compared to the rest of the series, right? So it's a little more grown up, a little more dark.
Right.
There was a lot more ships. So if you're big into ships, you see a lot more of them in Deep Space Nine than you did on TNG, where it was just just really the Enterprise most of the time. And a lot of the combat was filmed, from the bridge and not out in space a lot, right? So you saw a lot more of that in Deep Space Nine, which was pretty fun.
Yeah. I think actually Joe mentioned that when he was talking about it, that he loves ships. And so, yes, that
See,
that I agree.
DS9 fans know. They know exactly what it is. What it's all about.
It all makes sense now. But yeah, so this episode is Enterprise. And like I said, is season 2, The Breach, which was a very heavily Phlox episode, which is why I am doing a What Would Beverly Do? And hopefully I can remember enough. I was trying to look at Memory Alpha real quick to try and get my memory going. But let's go ahead and start with this conversation with a clip.
From childhood, every Antaran is taught that Denobulans are enemies, to be feared, reviled.
This is your chance to prove them wrong.
I doubt I could.
Set aside your preconceptions. I made some headway with him, but I won't be the one holding the scalpel. Show him that he can trust you.
Do you believe I can earn his trust in less than 36 hours?
All I'm asking is that you try. Your ethics might keep you from treating him against his will, but nothing's stopping you from talking to him. You're a doctor. He's your patient. Find a way to help him.
So this is a teleplay by Chris Black and John Shiban. Story by Daniel McCarthy. The air date of this was April 23rd, 2003. There was no star date, but the year of this episode was 2153, and it was directed by, everyone recognizes his name, Robert Duncan McNeil, who was Tom Paris, and, of course, Nicholas Locarno from TNG and Voyager. So the episode says, while Enterprise rescues 3 Denobulan scientists from a planet under a new xenophobic government, Dr. Phlox must treat a patient with racist views against his people. So, and I believe that people, what they said was Antaran. Here's one of the things that I remember about this episode was the medical ethics of it all. Okay, so here are 2 species who have clearly been at war with each other. I think they said 300 years. The Antarans are supposed to believe that the Denobulians are bad. They did all these horrible things, but the Denobulians learned that the Antarans are evil. And even in 300 years, they never resolved their conflict. I know, the whole start of this was something about like they had to go get some scientists. And I remember the away team with, I believe it was Trip and
Malcolm.
Oh, I can't remember. Malcolm. Yes. And there was one Travis. And Travis. Yes. And so they had to go down to try and find him, but they only had a certain amount of time. So there was all this stuff. But then here is an injured Antaran. And the guy was, listen, the guy was an asshole. Okay. Like, here's this doctor that could save his life. And he's like, F you. I don't want you touching me. I would rather die. And it reminded me of the TNG episode, which was, I believe, The Enemy, season 3, where it was Worf that could save the Romulan's life. And the Romulan's like, F you, I would not want Romulan blood in me. Or Klingon blood in me. I would rather die. Very same, similar things. But instead of, because Worf was like, shoot, die. I don't care. And he did. He did against Beverly's judgment here. But Phlox is caught in the middle of what he was grown up to believe and his ethics of it all. And I loved how he played it because you could see Billingsley did an amazing job because you could see that conflict in him where he wants to help them. Even when he's, Archer's like, help the guy, whether he likes it or not. And he's like, I can't. Because 1, he's an alien that I don't, really get along with. But 2, he's telling me not to touch him. And I need to respect that, right? But then he also knows that if he does help him, he would save his life. So there is just all this stuff that Phlox has to figure out. And I loved how it played out. How did you like how all of this was coming together? I mean, this is only season 2, but I think it did a really good job of showcasing all that.
So I think that this episode is like Trek at its core, dealing with morals and humanity's place kind of in the broader universe, right? There's a couple issues that I had with the episode. I don't understand why Archer was so shocked by Phlox's, because like as humans, consent is important too, right? Like we value that, and if somebody says not to help me, there's no helping. I mean, he helped him at first because when you're unconscious, that's implied consent, right? So but once he was alert and of sound mind and said, "Leave me alone," like Archer should have understood that too. I think they could have wrote that part a little better, because I think as a human, especially Archer of all people, would have understood Phlox's position.
Because during this time there was conflict still happening. Like nothing was perfect on Earth, especially with the Vulcans. So
and I did really like this episode. I think Robert Duncan McNeil did a great job directing it. There was something specific I was going to say. I forget. It'll come back.
It'll come back. Let the ADHD run its course. Now, Ed from My Figure Universe is in the chat. Thank you for joining me so late. And he says, the story is a good example of how hate can be taught and passed down. Society has to move beyond what we're taught. And that is very true.
Yes.
300 years that they're just at it because they were like, we were told they're evil, so they're evil. And that's not the case. Like each species had their own. You have something to say? What?
Yeah, well, so they haven't been at war for 300 years. They were at war before that. So there's been no official conflict for 300 years, but no resolution to that conflict. And there was no contact between the Anterans and the Denobulans. I do remember what I was going to say. I was going to say, it seems like, I can't remember if Deep Space Nine did a similar episode, but TNG had the one with Worf. Voyager also had the one, it was similar to this, where B'Elanna was injured and they created that Cardassian hologram, and who they were mimicking was like guilty of crimes against the Maquis, I think, and the Bajorans. And she didn't want that knowledge to be used to save her. And then Janeway kind of overrode her and, forced her to get healed. Different situation. You're stranded in the Delta Quadrant. You kind of need a chief engineer, right? So she was making the decision for the collective and not just for B'Elanna, though. So, but I feel like Trek does a good job of these kinds of episodes and dealing with the morals of medical ethics.
Well, even with TNG, like Picard, I remember when Picard told Worf when he came in, he's like, I can't tell you to do this procedure. I can't. That is your decision. But let me tell you why you should do it. Because Worf's decision could ultimately destroy the entire ship, right? Not saving this Romulan. So he's like, please consider this. I can't force you, but please understand why this is important. Worf still, too bad, so sad. Luckily, Geordi saved the day by helping the other Romulan that was hiding. So that played in their favor. But at that time, they didn't understand that. They didn't know that was happening. So you're right. Star Trek is very good at putting these stories together. But like you said, the way Archer was very much like, too bad, save him. And he's like, but he's saying no. It's like having a DNR and they're just like, oh, well, we'll still put them on, we'll still do CPR and do whatever we do, need to do.
Yeah.
So that's where I agree. I was all like, okay, Archer, back off. They're not human. Like, let's take ourselves out of the equation. Ed does say the closest analogy for Deep Space Nine doing this probably would have been the episode Duet. And yeah, that's true. And hello, Johans, I'm going to say. Forgive me if I am, but Johan, thank you. Thank you. See, I'm on a high of just buying a car and spending a lot of money. I didn't even change my shirt. I'm wearing Blue October. If anyone loves the band, so do I. In the chat saying, been a long day, finally home from work. Same. Same. Johan S. So we were close.
There we go.
Yeah, Jay was a lot closer than me, but thank you for correcting us. But yes, I think, again, if Beverly was in this situation, and I guess we could jump into what would Beverly do? She would do exactly what she kind of did in The Enemy, where she's like, we need to save him, right? But she would also be conflict in the sense of like, he's saying not to. And that's what she did, right? She was like, he doesn't even want Worf's blood. I can't do anything about it but make him comfortable.
Yeah. I was when I did the rewatch, I was doing it from that, you know, if I took John Billingsley out and put in Gates, how would the episode play out differently? And I'm not sure that it would have. I think it would have gone pretty well exactly the same. I feel like Beverly might have been more vocal to her captain, kind of, you know, explaining it. But I mean, also humans wouldn't have the issues that the Denobulans had with the Antarans, right? So, it's not really a 1-to-1. But I think as far as the morals go, I think she would have morals. As far as the morals go, it would have been very similar.
Yeah, I think in her case, she would try and find a way, because for Phlox, because he did have this conflict with their species, right? He was just like, well, they don't want my help, so too bad. But then that's where he was having that second guess, like, well, maybe I should try and help him. Maybe I should try to talk to him. Which
he did have a little bit of that, but I found like it was the Antaran that was more, let's say, racially motivated with his decision.
Yes.
Right.
Which is why
Phlox,
I was like,
Phlox absolutely was willing to help. I think maybe their relationship probably didn't get him to fight as hard.
Yeah. But that's why he was,
because he broke ethics in another episode. I can't remember if it's prior to this one, where they were not supposed to cure a species. Remember, he was ordered not to do it, and then he. Right. Yeah. So he has no problem breaking ethics when he thinks it's the right thing to do. So in this one, he seemed a little more hesitant, and that was probably racially motivated. I just can't remember if that episode came prior to this one, and I feel like it did. I feel like it came before this, right? So
now, what do you think about if Beverly had to make that decision? You know, breaking ethics, medical ethics.
Oh, to cure that planet in that episode? Or
well, like in the sense of like if she had to break medical ethics in order to do what she felt was right, kind of like what you were saying about Phlox, would Beverly be like conflicted, or would she just do it? I kind of feel like she would do it knowing like, I know I'm right and it's going to work, and I'm going to just.
Yeah, I find with Beverly, most cases, medical ethics and her ethics are pretty well aligned.
Pretty similar.
Yeah, because she was always kind of fighting that fight, right? Like with Hugh and stuff. So,
true.
You know, even though that, you know, clearly they, you know, a lot of crap could have been avoided if they had used Hugh the way that Picard wanted to, right? Or I should say that Starfleet wanted to.
Yeah.
But she fought against that, and I don't know. I think she's pretty well in line with what medical ethics would be, and I think Phlox is too. There's just that preconception, right? Of who these people are.
There was that scene though when he was having that conversation, and unfortunately, since I didn't rewatch it, I can't really give into full detail. But I do remember he kind of like argued with the guy, like, "I'm trying to help you, you know, like let me help you." And yes, I'm afraid of you, because he was always taught that they're evil. But that's when he had mentioned his son, where he's like, I don't even talk to one of my kids because he believes to always hate you. And I try to tell my kids to always, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. And like, I think that helped for this what was it, Antaran? Where he kind of was like, this doesn't seem like the Denobulan. John Billingsley is going to be so mad at me for saying that wrong. that he's like, these aren't the same that I was told about. Now, Ed does say Beverly came close to this kind of situation as well in the episode The Host. And I believe he's talking about because is it with Riker? Because they had to use somebody else, or there was a lot happening in The Host, to be honest. So I'm not really sure which part you're talking about, Ed. But Johanna says 4 espressos and 5 cups of coffee later, able to enjoy the Crusher podcast. Thank you. I'm just trying to drink my water. It was like 85 degrees and I was stuck at a dealership for 4 hours. So yeah, that was fun. But going back to Phlox, I think when he finally just released all of that like tension that he was feeling, right? He was trying to just keep, I'm just a doctor, I'm just a doctor, I'm just a doctor. But the moment he started being a Denobulan, okay, and that guy was like, aha, there he is. Then he kind of realized, oh, maybe they're not as bad, right? Because they were showing that side that they were hiding, I guess, from each other this whole time. So I did really like that scene, especially when he was talking about his kids. He was just telling him, I try to teach my kids to never judge anybody, even you guys, right? So I really enjoyed that scene a lot.
Yeah, it was really good. There's a number of good scenes like this throughout the whole episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, was there anything else that kind of stood out to you in this episode?
I really liked the scene with him and T'Pol in the mess hall. While she was very like understated during the conversation, she was kind of there as almost a soundboard. And I think if you just paid attention to the dialogue, she kind of sat down just to sit down. I mean, at this point in the series, T'Pol is trying to be a little more sociable with everybody, right?
Right.
But she kind of walks in at first and goes to the replicator type thing.
Replicator.
And obviously, as the first officer, she knows what's going on the ship. And she kind of does give him this look like, I feel like I need to go talk to him. And then she sits down and just asks some questions. And he just kind of talks himself through some things. And even though he walks away and he's still conflicted, I think it just helped kind of push his conscience just forward a little bit. A little bit. Yeah. Right. And to him, the real issue here was that somebody had to extend an olive branch, right? It wasn't that Phlox was doing anything immoral at all. Whether he treated or not, he could claim the moral high ground there. But I think it was the resistance was having to do what he needed to do to get the Antaran to see that Denobulans aren't the boogeyman, and neither are they, right? So yeah. And I mean, I think he understood that pretty quickly when he was there, because it was more fear seeing him, right? It wasn't like hate. It was fear. So that was kind of the difference. So Denobulans are fearful, while the Antarans were hatred, right? Like you said, racist. So it was nice to see that he's the one that took the high ground in the sense of that he's the one that offered the olive branch. Like, this is why. And look, the Antarans were justified in their feelings, right? Like the Denobulans did terrible things. Exactly. But I think this episode just shows that time needs to try to heal some things, and people need to do what they need to do to kind of move forward, because nobody alive at the time of the episode was alive when they had those conflicts, right? So or even just the sense of everyone's different. Everyone doesn't, we're both human. And we have different beliefs and we have different thoughts and stuff like that, but that doesn't make one, and he was trying to explain, like, you think that Denobulans are all the same and we're not. Yeah. We're all different. And I think that was just, and also people change, people grow. Like in those 300 years, they grew and they, were not as bad as the Antarans thought they were. So I think that this episode has a good message that's very relevant to today.
Extremely. Extremely.
Yes. Always, but today.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, it's like it's never ending. Like, I mean, this episode was what, in 2002, 3? I think it said 2003.
2002,
And
2003.
look, and now 22 years later, we're having this conversation because it's
Well, Star Trek's always ahead of its time, so
it's seriously like well, I mean, even the TNG episode that was in 91 or 90, no, 90. It was like, and I'm like decades before, and it still is relevant. So yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm gonna jump real fast to Penny. I got one Penny, and she gave me a book. So I'm gonna jump into Penny for your thoughts real fast.
Penny for your thoughts.
All right. Abby from First Flight Podcast. My love for Abby grows every day, especially when she does this. She understood the assignment and did not disappoint. She gave me an email of all her thoughts. Now, if you guys love Enterprise, please go listen to Abby and Chris's podcast, First Flight. They are basically deep diving every episode of Enterprise, and here is why. So this is what she had to say about the episode, The Breach. So first off, she says, Phlox writing and narrating a letter. This format comes back around a few times in Enterprise with him, and it's great every time. I do like those moments where Phlox is, doing those recordings and stuff like that. And of course, we do see it at the end while he wants to reach out to his son. This episode also shows the growing relationship between Phlox and Archer, and I love it. They are as close to peers as each has on the ship, and they both appreciate each other deeply. 3, wow, can Billingsley act? He can do comedy, warmth, serious, mad, and can change on a dime. What a gift to Trek, which I agree. I think John did an amazing job in this episode, especially like she said, there was a roller coaster of emotions that Phlox was going through. Also, like you said, Jay, the directing of this episode is top notch. Thanks to Robbie Duncan McNeil for knowing Trek as both an actor and a director. And I kind of want to touch a little bit on that here in a second. And then she says, and my mic drop moment for Phlox, his connection to being a parent. Why not try to live as an example to yours? Love this and all the ethics of this episode. And she went, side note, this is the episode where the joke about pencil boxes on First Flight came from. The sample box, and she does quotes, they are so concerned about this and is 100% just a school supply box. Chris and her teachers, so they were like, that's a school, that's a supply box. And they're like, what is it? It's, oh my gosh. I
like when the guys digging for it in the when they're crouched, and then Trip is doing the countdown and he's looking for his phaser to shoot him in the ass. It was
yes. Oh my gosh, I remember that.
Leave it to Connor Trenier to do the comedy so well, right?
Gotta love Connor. Ed says, unfortunately, those that don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. And we are learning that right now. Johannes, it kind of touches on the idiom of how different the thought process changes when it's a group compared to just an individual. That is very, very true. And
was
then
it herd mentality, right?
Yes, exactly. Ed also says, I enjoy the doctor reciting a letter in the format that they do. It feels like an homage to the show MASH. Oh, that does bring back some MASH moments, actually. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Those kind of moments also remind you that these are not just people on a starship. They're I was going to say humans, but they're people with lives outside of Enterprise, right?
Yeah, exactly. Real fast, I want to touch, like you had said, about Robert's directing on this. And she makes a very good point. He knows Star Trek very well as the actor, as he was there, just did it. Voyager had just ended prior to Enterprise. And, and then having that directing of like, this is what we should do and this is how it works and everything. And I think that's why it makes the episode so special But that's why a lot of these episodes that are directed by the Star Trek actors, TNG, DS9, LeVar and Michael did a bunch for DS9. And of course we also, and I think even Avery and Renee and so many people did DS9, and then also same with Voyager. And, and of course we know about TNG. I mean, Jonathan, for goodness sakes, and even Patrick, and of course Gates. And so they understand just how it's supposed to be. They understand, again, Sub Rosa, not the greatest Trek episode, not even Star Trek at all, but Jonathan took it as he could and directed the hell out of it, which to me makes it much better than what it could have been, right? And I think this is a perfect example for that. And I love that they gave the actors this choice to direct these episodes because, again, they understood the assignment. I'm not a huge fan of the episodes that Patrick did, and nothing against him. I was just not into the stories, but I did enjoy, I believe it was Phantasms, where Data was having the dream, and that's where they had Freud and all that stuff, and the creatures were eating their cellular whatever. And I think that was a very good job. I loved the one shot in the beginning as he's walking down the corridor, and that was one of the later episodes. So I think Patrick kind of was like, okay, I think I'm starting to get it, because he's such an actor. Now being behind the scenes, it's a little different. So what you had mentioned it earlier about Robbie's directing. What else did you notice that you thought was just great that enhanced the episode?
I think he did a good job of balancing a lot of the heavy content in the episode with some of the more comedic moments. Especially, there's the odd time on the Enterprise where there's some lighthearted moments, but more of the B plot with the away team on the planet, spelunking.
Yeah,
I think that's the term. There was a lot of funny moments in that, like when Travis hurts himself and he's growing concern about his well-being or something, and then they said you don't have to worry about going down. I think that was the line, and then he's like, "It's not me I'm worried about," right? Because neither of the other two had climbed before, right? So, and one thing that really kind of stood out in this episode too, and I think this one does a good job of it, is that when Enterprise started, Travis was very, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed ensign, younger guy, but then kind of as the show goes on, you're realizing that he may be new to Starfleet, but he has a lot more experience than many of the crew have with certain things, right? And you see him in a lot of those situations where he's explaining, space travel more to them because he grew up on a boomer ship, I think they call it, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, right? So, he spent, was it like most of his grade school years on a ship traveling between the stars, right? So, finding the sweet spot in the ship where the gravity is the lowest and stuff. So like little moments like that, you see that Travis, while he's younger and fresher in Starfleet, he's got some experience that he brings to the table still. And you see that in this episode as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know. Like I said, when I was binging Enterprise finally, and this episode popped up, it just reminded me so much of Beverly's character and how she would handle it. And I think it's pretty similar of how Phlox handled it. And, even let's put her in that spot of where, let's say there's a species that attacked her people for hundreds of years or whatever it was. She would be conflicted of like, as a doctor, I'm here to help people, not condemn them, not destroy them, not, just be evil towards them like I was told to. I think Phlox and her definitely have similar ideas and taste and just on how to handle everything. I do real fast before I get in the tricorder rating. Tribbles were shown. Tribbles were shown. And of course, it's Phlox. It's like, this is a tribble. Hey.
Whatever. It's just food for my lizard thing.
Yeah. And that explains, they had to explain of why it didn't reproduce, right? Like, why aren't there more tribbles on the ship? Well, because it's food. So, so that was a quick little time there. But let me jump into that tricorder rating.
My tricorder.
2 votes. So because of the whole car accident thing, and I was doing all the extra chiropractor and treatment therapy, I forgot to put the link for votes. So I was looking to get the 2. So it was either 5 medical ethics, 4 tribbles, 3 geologists, or 1 to 2 arch enemies, and it was split between 4 and 5. I definitely will give this 4 tribbles. Like you said, Jay, it's not big, especially the Archer stuff. I even remember when I was watching it, I was like, okay, Archer, back off.
Yeah, it did seem very, very, the writing was a little off character for him in this, because it just didn't align with anything we've seen from humans up to that point, right?
And I don't know if it was because Archer was just worried because if they didn't find those Denobulan scientists, they were going to be killed and all that, whatever. But maybe he was a little stressed out. I don't know. But yes, I don't think he was very well written here. So what would your, rating be for this episode?
We're aligned. We're aligned on this one.
We're aligned?
Sure. Yeah.
See,
yeah.
This is why I have you on the show.
And I again, like you said, I think it's the Archer stuff. As great of a character he is, as great of an actor as Scott Bakula is, I felt like his writing in this episode just a little off, and it kind of took me aback. Yeah, it took me aback a little bit. I think even the first time I watched it, and even on rewatches, I remember thinking like, it's like when Picard or somebody like acts completely opposite of what you expect out of them, and I guess people do that, but
yeah,
I mean, he says something. Phlox says something like Hippocrates was not Denobulan or something, and I'm like, are you implying that as humans we would just say to hell with consent? Because that's not right. That's not even the messages. That's not even messaging from previous Trek series, right? Consent has been brought up many times on the show, right? So it just
comes to mind.
It seemed a little off. Maybe it was just because they needed some of that conflict to bounce off of, and you didn't have Trip or Malcolm on the ship. I don't know, but yeah, it was a little off. But Archer was also barely in the episode.
Yeah, like you said, he was probably just that conflict.
Yeah, and I mean, T'Pol was in the one scene, so it was it was very, I want to say, junior officer heavy. This episode, right?
Right. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it was really highlighting who Phlox is, and I think that was kind of the start. I know we end up getting doctor's orders, and we also had a night in sick bay. We have a lot of really good episodes of Phlox, but this one really highlighted of where Phlox come from and how he is as a person. Especially because he didn't take the, all Antarans are evil. He tried to think outside the box, unlike, I think he mentioned his grandmother telling him how bad they were and all that stuff. And in his way, he's like, but are they? He always had that mentality of just like always thinking of, what else could happen, and John Billingsley actually is very much the same way of like not just staying in one lane, just kind of branching out and seeing how things are. So I definitely agree. My next episode is going to be on May 30th, and I don't know what it is. Well, now I do, because I had to record this, but I just found out. But let's see what that is, shall we? The sickbay spinner says it is the life and death of Jack Crusher, which I'm actually very excited about. I really, really want to try my best and talk about as much of Jack that we know. Of course, not Jack the son, Jack the husband, and
Jack Sr.
How Jack Sr. It was always kind of hard to say senior and junior because they weren't really related, which I find kind of funny because Jack the son has a name that he's not even related to, but it's fine.
Yeah.
But the thing is like Jack Richard Crusher actually is very important to the story, not only with Picard, but Beverly and Wesley. There, he plays a huge part, and I liked how they portrayed him also in the book. So I'll definitely get into that. This episode, of course, is going to be happening in May. It's basically my last live of the month. And so, yeah, I'm very, very excited. I have some time to get this going. Hopefully no car crashes and hopefully nothing else happens between now and then. But in a couple of weeks, I'm actually going to be at my local con. So that's why my episodes are a little scattered, a little spread out here in May because of it. But that's where I'll get into what that episode is going to be dropped. So, real quick, Jay, I know, you've been on the show plenty of times and we have mentioned Jack Crusher here and there, but what did you wish we saw of Jack Crusher? Like, what was it that of Jack that you kind of just was like, I wish we had this?
Like Jack Crusher Sr.?
Jack Crusher Sr.
I wish we saw Jack Crusher. I mean, we only ever saw him as a hologram, right? So, if I remember correctly,
Indian ritual. I mean, sorry, but like that weird with Wesley and the ritual thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
But like, I would say that for a character that we really have never seen, like, name another character that casts such a big shadow over this franchise.
Right.
That's not that you never see, right? So,
Right.
I think it'd be interesting to see. Especially some of the dynamics between him and Picard. I did a Picard rewatch not too long ago, and just the story about him and Jack stealing the shuttle to go hook up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it just kind of gives you a glimpse into a Picard that you don't really see either. Right. He's always so stoic.
Right.
We've seen that since episode 1 of TNG. So, to see who this guy was that helped bring out that in this character that we love so much too would have been neat. Some flashback scenes.
Yeah, I agree. My biggest pet peeve, not one Jack and Beverly scene.
Yeah.
I'll be screaming through the rooftops on May 30th. So be excited. So let me get into my redhead alert. And here we are, guys. I have the honor of chatting with Melinda Snodgrass, who wrote amazing episodes like Measure of a Man and The High Ground. If you have a penny for your thoughts for Melinda, please head over to crusherconvo.com and record me a 60 to 90 second clip, or you can send me an email with your MP3 or question to crusherconvo@gmail.com. My episode will premiere on May 16th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm very, very excited. The High Ground is such a very pivotal Beverly episode, so I cannot wait to talk to Melinda. And it's going to be pre-recorded, and I'm going to drop it on the 16th because I'm going to be at my Comic-Con on 17th and 18th. So I got a lot going on, and also work is very busy, so I kind of had to take a little step back from the podcast just because I'm going to be all over the place. But yes, I am super, super excited about that. And of course, my Patreon shout-outs go to Chuck, Leslie, and Dave, who are my Commander patrons, and Engineer Mark, who is my Admiral patron. If you would like to support the podcast and enjoy exclusive extra content, just head over to patreon.com/Crusher Convo, and you can sign up for as low as $3 a month. Oh my gosh, we did it.
I like that the Admiral of Starfleet Medical is Engineer Mark. It's a lot of titles.
It's a lot of titles. Well, it's funny because somehow he's really good. I've met Mark and he's amazing and he loves to support podcasts and he is really good friends with the guys at Open Pike. And he got the title because that is a call-in podcast, right? That is their shtick. And he called in, and somehow this engineer Mark happened, and now that's his name. So anytime we see it, it's like it's engineer Mark.
That's awesome.
So yes, and he's great. He supports the podcast, and he's been awesome. But thank you, Jay, for joining me. So sorry for the late start, but please let the listeners where they can find you.
I'm over at Twitter, which I think you've added me, maybe my Blue Sky, but I think you can find me on Blue Sky.
I'm not on Twitter.
Yeah,
I cut Twitter out.
Yeah, I try to not be on there as much lately too. So
it's toxic, man. I'm all like, I'm glad I got out when I did.
It really is, yeah.
But you have a Twitch of you playing video games. You should let people know.
I do. Yeah, it's the same.
At times.
It's been a minute since I've done that. I've just been busy with IRL stuff. So, but yeah, I might get back into doing some of that. There's some games coming out soon that I might want to try. Dune Awakening looks really good. Okay, now
for the non-millennials who are younger than us, IRL is in real life. Just unfortunately, if I were to say that to my Gen Z daughter, she'd be like, "Huh?" I was like, "Let me tell you about chat rooms at ASL and all that."
MSN.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I liked AIM. AIM was my, AOL and all that stuff. That's where I started. I was 12 years old, and that's where it all began. And it never really ended. That was my social media at the time. No stranger danger there, for sure.
Yeah. There's quite a few chat rooms. I'm sure there was some stranger dangers, but
I got stories. Stories, and that's why with my daughter, I was like, "You need to be careful." When she tried to do Discord, I was like, "Nope, no, absolutely not." That's where my role playing started. RPG in a chat room. That was some old school stuff right there.
Not sure what kind of role playing we're talking about anymore, so let's just move on.
Okay, no, not that. Thank you very much. You're going a whole other path. I was talking about Xena. Okay, I played in Amazon. I had a whole story. Jeez, Jay, get your mind out of the gutter.
We went from stranger danger to.
Well, that's the unfortunate part. It was very innocent role play, and then all of a sudden, it's like, "Hey, let's do this." And I'm like, "Huh?" And I'm 12, right? So that was the unfortunate part of that time. But anyways, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone that was in the chat. I think I got one more. Dave, hi, I'll pop it in for a bit. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Again, so sorry I'm late, but I got it. We did it. My first Enterprise episode. And like I said, hit up First Flight Podcast if you do love Enterprise. But anyways,
and
guys,
you picked a good one to be your first.
I'm very happy with that episode. Like I said, it popped in my head like real quick, and I think I watched it like again, like I saw it again, like back to back because it was so good in my opinion. So yeah, I knew this had to be an episode. But anyways, guys, live long and prosper. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Crusher out.